On December 5th, 2023, Majewski Architects, Landmark Properties, and the Bonner Advisory Group held a resident participation meeting in the Ann Arbor District Library. And there were so many people who showed up to that meeting, they had to live stream it to a separate room because it was at capacity. And the reason for this many people showing up is because the meeting pertained to a very important cultural and commercial space for the residents of Ann Arbor. This is Pinball Petes, a pinball and video game arcade opened in the 1970s, and since then it has been a cornerstone for Ann Arbor culture. With its family-friendly nature and extremely low cost to enter, Pinball Petes is unlike any arcade in all of Southeast Michigan. For one, it's in a very walkable area. Ann Arbor is one of the most walkable cities in the entire state. One moment you're viewing the amazing street art of Graffiti Alley, and just a 5-minute walk from there, you're across the city putting in a couple quarters for some games at Pete's. Speaking of a couple of quarters, Pinball Petes does not have an entry fee, making it extremely cheap to have a good time. All it takes is $5 in quarters and you could be there for a whole hour. It's family friendly, with most other arcades being either bars or redemption arcades, where the whole establishment is just about earning tickets and winning prizes. Pinball Petes, on the other hand, houses some beloved arcade games of old, from light gun games such as The House of the Dead and The Terminator, to fighting game classics such as Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, to, of course, lots and lots of pinball machines. Pinball Petes could be family night, date night, boys night, girls night, and even the home for competition. For generations, Pinball Petes has been the home of amazing games and countless memories. And if the developers at Majewski Architects move forward with their plans, an establishment that has been a beloved spot in Ann Arbor for over 4 decades could be unceremoniously taken away. The developers plan on taking Galleria Mall, the mall that houses Pinball Petes, and demolishing it for a 17-story high-rise apartment complex, removing Pinball Petes, a local post office, several other small businesses, and over 45,000 square feet of commercial space. And for many people, this was something that they were not going to just let happen. On December 5th, a public hearing for the demolition of Galleria Mall was to take place, and I decided to go.
A lot of the comments, which we'll address tonight, but were generally the same. There were some about some arcade in town, Pinball Petes.
After a brief summary of the plans for the demolition and construction of a new complex, attendees were asked to approach a microphone to ask questions and voice their opinions. The meeting was about an hour long. About 15 of those minutes were spent talking about the plans for the new complex itself, and the other 45 minutes were spent just so people could ask questions and speak their minds. And speak their minds, they definitely did.
All right, hi, my name is Julie Pastorino, and I'm here today to talk about the importance of Pinball Petes to the Ann Arbor community.
Hi, my name is Sandra. I am here as a local parent who is in support of Pinball Petes.
So I'm a competitive pinball player that travels around the country playing pinball. I can't stress this enough that Pinball Petes is not like any place in the world.
I'm in the fortunate position to currently work at the CS Mott Children's Hospital. Some of them have to drive all the way down from the Upper Peninsula to get here, and they get excited after having their G-tubes removed to go, oh, we get to go to the arcade, how fun!
I just want to say that when you're walking down those stairs, like, it's a lot more than just my memories. It's a legacy.
What's happened in the past 10 years is the redevelopment of our beloved city into another cookie-cutter 15-minute city. It's now essentially a giant H&M store. To dislocate
The face of Ann Arbor is changing. It's becoming Grand Rapids. I think it's heartbreaking. The developers are not from Ann Arbor. They don't care what happens to Ann Arbor. They care about making money.
It's safe to say that around 80 to 90% of us are here because of a cultural place like Pinball Petes. I see Pinball Petes t-shirts all over the place, and it was quite telling to me, whether it was a joke or not, and if it was, I apologize, but it was quite telling to me that you simply referred to Pinball Petes as some arcade.
Yeah. I would like you to present a comprehensive plan to preserve these essential Ann Arbor institutions and not further the city's systemic problems with affordability and car dependency. See, also just a personal note here, I've seen like 10 different buildings in the city alone that look exactly like the one you're proposing. Please do better.
To be honest, I was only really expecting to see the people who had to be there with maybe a couple like-minded gaming nerds to show up at that meeting. But I was absolutely floored to see the sheer number of people attending this hearing. But more shocking to me was the sheer range of ages of people who attended. But out of all the people who came up to the stand to voice their opinion, one person raised my interest the most.
I'm the guy who set up SavePetesAA and wrote a lot of the letters that you guys.
This is Ryan Gerardo, the person who was probably the most responsible for the sheer amount of people who attended the hearing. Ryan is the creator of Save Petes, a website to help spread awareness for the demolition of Galleria Mall, which was then spread all across several communities in Ann Arbor. After the hearing was finished and we basically had to be kicked out because we were staying there too long, I was fortunate enough to actually get in touch with Ryan and eventually schedule an interview.
So I'm Ryan Gerardo. I'm an Ann Arbor resident, a former employee of Pinball Petes, and I am currently the IFPA. Well, my wife and I currently run the IFPA-sanctioned tournaments at Pinball Petes for pinball players.
When did you hear the news about Pinball Petes potentially being torn down?
I heard it from a local newspaper called MLive. That's actually, to my understanding, also where the owners heard about it. No, I read that the building could be getting torn down. And so, I went into the arcade to practice some machines, make sure that they were working for the tournament that week. And I was talking to some of the employees there and asking them about it. And they told me, yeah, a reporter came in yesterday and that's the first we'd heard of it. Our landlord hadn't mentioned it. The new developer hadn't mentioned it. They didn't know anything about it. And that's when we really started to get a little concerned that the process might be excluding participation from the current businesses that are on that lot. So I started to look into it. I reached out to the city council, my city council people for Ward 3. I reached out to the developer themselves, or at least the developer's representative, Luke, and started asking some questions and really found that I wasn't getting a lot of answers. Nobody really seemed to have much to say about what this would mean for the businesses that are currently on that spot, what the timeline looked like. The employees at the arcade were starting to get nervous about it. We were starting to get nervous about it. So we decided to react early and strong instead of too late. So, we started drumming up community support and awareness to make sure that the new developers that want to come in, Landmark Properties, let's make sure that they understand that these businesses that currently exist are really important to the local community and ensure that they understand that they're playing with fire if they're not going to include those businesses in their plan. Really, the goal was to make sure that there was a route to success for Pinball Petes, as well as many of those businesses that currently exist as possible. I don't want to be unfair to the developers, right? I don't want to paint them in a bad light. But I got the impression that they were not really super interested in talking to the community at that stage. Partially maybe because they didn't really have answers. Like, it is still very early in the development stage, right? Or in the development process. But they also maybe didn't really want to be talking to the community because they didn't necessarily have to, or they didn't maybe see themselves as needing to, would be my read as an outsider. Because the way that Ann Arbor zoning works, they're very eager to get more housing in Ann Arbor. The city council recently changed the zoning laws such that the city council does not have approval rights over developments like this in that type of zoning, which is a downtown zoning. And so the city council basically pushed off the responsibility of approving these large buildings to a non-elected body that is appointed by the council, but is not beholden to the council necessarily. The council wants to be able to put up as many apartments as possible to assist with what we essentially have as a housing crisis, but they don't want to be maybe held accountable for the decisions, like what is displaced in that process. And so to make the process much more streamlined and more attractive to developers, as well as kind of insulate themselves from those changes that are happening in the community, they've made a political change. As long as it meets the zoning requirements, like by the letter of the law, there is no process for rejecting them. And because of that, a situation like this where a developer who wants to develop on a plot can kind of roll in and not expect to have any pushback on a building, not expect to have to work with the community in any meaningful way, because there's really no process for rejecting their building. It just seems like the developer was not eager to be talking about their plans with the community for whatever reason.
What was your reaction to seeing so many people ready to raise awareness?
When we created SavePetes and started working on raising awareness, we did so with the knowledge that this is not just important to us. We knew that there were communities within Ann Arbor for whom Pinball Petes is a really important third space. I don't think I expected to see such strong and immediate support. We expected it to be a little bit of a slog, but it wasn't. It really took off kind of on its own. That doesn't mean we weren't working on it. We were constantly working on raising awareness. I was going and talking to the business owners of every business on South University and asking them what it would mean for their business if Galleria Mall were to disappear. What would it mean for their rents if over 40,000 square feet of commercial space were to evaporate? And, what would it mean for their business? I was also going out and flyering. I was talking to residents of the existing properties from Landmark Properties. So we were doing work on the ground. Obviously, I was looking for communities like the Fighting Game community in Southeast Michigan to also make sure that there was awareness there. But the really nice thing that we found is once people were made aware of the threat to Pinball Petes and the other businesses on South University, they often would react right away. We did not have to explain why it was important. The strategy we had around awareness was really focused on Pinball Petes, obviously. And I would say the most important business culturally to Ann Arbor in that space is Pinball Petes. But we wanted to raise that awareness around Pinball Petes as part of a larger strategy of making sure people understood the impacts that could happen if you demolish out that much commercial space, those many successful businesses, and did not find a way to replace that space in a meaningful capacity. So Pinball Petes is a poster child for that, but there are other impacts there. So yeah, I think we managed to pull together a fairly unlikely coalition. Mike, who is one of the co-owners of Pinball Petes, was in the audience, and he said that he had no idea how much the arcade still meant to communities. Like every generation that comes through that arcade, every time they see a new generation come through the arcade, they kind of wonder, is this the last generation who's going to care about this place? And people keep coming, and people keep loving being there, and it's meaningful generation after generation after generation. And I think for them, it really showcased the importance of what they've built for the community. If for no other reason than that, it was extremely important to have that kind of turnout. The morale in the arcade from the staff and the owners has gone from frenetic, not knowing what's going on, finding out from reporters who are asking them questions about what it means for their business, to optimistic. And that's a huge change. Just from the community support and starting to have dialogues with the current landowner and the future landowner. Relocating a business is really, really hard. And the best case scenario here, well, the best case scenario is that Landmark decides, hey, Galleria Mall, there was a lot of pushback. There's actually an empty lot that's ready for development literally across the street. Why don't we put the same plans up there? The next best case scenario, the development goes on. We get the new housing. There's a more commercial space in that lot because the developer listened to the community, and Pinball Petes continues to exist either by relocating with assistance from the developer or by going into storage and hibernating for a couple of years and then coming back when the building is done. Either of those situations is very difficult for a business of the type of Pinball Petes. Finding a location that is able to store this business, but also able to support this business with the right type of environment, very, very difficult. Relocating, it's going to be tough, and it's probably the most likely scenario right now.
Speaking now, if someone would like to help spread awareness for Save Petes or try to help help Pinball Petes in general, from your perspective, what can they do?
It's very difficult to say because we're in a holding pattern. But the number one thing anybody can do when supporting any kind of a business that's going through this, not just Pinball Petes, is go support the business. So if you really want to make sure Pinball Petes is able to survive, and you really want to make sure it's able to thrive, go down there and spend some quarters. Find a staff member and say, hey, I really love this place, and I hope you're able to find a way to continue it. Make sure that they know how important the space is to you and support them with your dollars. Pinball Petes is not an expensive place to support. You go down there with $2-3, you'll be down there for 15-20 minutes. It helps a lot for them to just know that it's worth the effort to go and communicate with this multi-billion-dollar real estate firm. They're just a little local business. It's worth them to negotiate. It's worth them to go through the effort to continue, because left to their own devices, they've had a good run and they might just decide it's not worth the trouble. This could end the business, right? You can also email us at SavePetesAA@gmail.com and just email us with something that says, I want to be contacted with updates. You email us that when we have something to say about a direct action or communication you can make with the developer, we'll say that. It could be a year, it could be 2 years before we're at that stage of the process. So it is very much a waiting game. It's about patience as well as action, right? Staying engaged through that period is difficult, but that's the important part. All we're saying, effectively, or at least what I'm saying, and I think the community has rallied around, is we really want this developer to maximize the amount of space available for businesses to support the community that those apartments are going to bring in. We're not anti-development. I don't think very many people, if anybody, who participated actively in the Save Petes messaging wants less housing. There are not a lot of voices who are anti-high-rise. There are not a lot of voices who even have a problem with this location. We want to make sure that it's not just benefiting the developer, but it's also benefiting the people who live in a future building and the people who already live around that building.
Pinball Petes is not the only establishment that is endangered by the demolition of Galleria Mall, and it most certainly is not the only arcade endangered by demolition in general. But Pinball Petes represents so much more to us than just some arcade. Ann Arbor is trying desperately to increase housing space in the city, which, on paper, is an incredibly good thing. But it's at the risk of increasing rent for existing residents and the cost of lowering commercial space for established stores and cultural third spaces to survive and flourish. The meeting in December and the Save Petes website are just 2 small steps on the journey to making our voices heard. If you want to see more places like Pinball Petes to stay in Ann Arbor for generations more, make your voices heard, be respectful, and support the places you love as much as you can. It goes an incredibly long way. And if enough people share the message enough, Pinball Petes could stay for many more years.
I think it's clear here that Pinball Petes is more than just a family place. Pinball Petes is family. And we need